I want to welcome everybody to this meeting of the Temple City Council to conduct a workshop. It is May 4th. Currently, it's 3:35. First thing is public comments. I don't see anybody signed up, so we'll move on to discuss as may be needed any regular meeting agenda items for this afternoon's meeting. Council, anything on the consent or the regular agenda, or staff, any comments for council?
I think you did tell us that we were supposed to disclose if we had conversations with anyone, and I did speak with it would be our item number 9. The Gwen, I think, from Radio reached out to me just to kind of explain their side of what's going on. So if y'all had any questions when we get to that, just holler at me. I'll let you know what I heard.
Item 9,
Item,
9.
well, maybe,
Yes. Under ordinance.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
She called me yesterday.
Oh, likewise, I forgot we're supposed to disclose. Double disclosure.
All right. Anything else? That's quick. All right, moving on, we will receive a presentation regarding proposed amendments to chapter 5, which is ambulance services of the code, city's code of ordinances. Mr. Nuttall.
Thank you. So this is about chapter 5 ambulances. The first thing I wanted to discuss. There we go. Is why would we be addressing this now? And the franchises are currently set for a term of 5 years. The majority of them are now set to expire this year. They were done 5 years ago. So with that, it just made sense to go ahead and review, make sure we have everything up to date. And by doing it now, this timeline will allow us to renew the franchises under the revised chapter 5. We're going through the workshop today. The plan is to have it for first reading next meeting, and then the second reading, the meeting following that, assuming we have all our changes in place. And then the charter requires 30 days before those franchises can be activated. So that'll still give us a little bit of time, a little bit of breathing room before they expire in September. Throughout the document, most of the changes are actually formatting changes, and I've got 2 examples up there showing how the defined terms have been capitalized, making them more easy to identify throughout the entire document, the entire chapter. Additionally, we have added defined terms for ambulance, franchisee, governing person, officer, and peace officer. The governing person, officer, and peace officer are just incorporating existing definitions and statutes and state statutes. Ambulance allows us to, and franchisee allow us to actually kind of shorten the chapter because ambulance refers to both advanced life support vehicles and basic life support vehicles. So it's a much easier term to say. Franchisee allows us to shorten up what was previously in the chapter non-emergency ambulance transfer services. The change in this section, we get into the emergency medical services. This is the second article. And section 5.5, we did change that a little bit just to protect the city in the event of catastrophic emergency. Previously, it said that the service shall be available to persons in other portions of Bell County, Texas. We added if available when requested, protecting us in the event that we're using all of the services at the moment. It does still require that the emergency call originate within the city limits or the destination end up in the city limits. So either the call is here and they're going to a different hospital, or they're going to end up in one of our hospitals.
Does city limits include ETJ?
No, it is specifically city limits. Section 5.6 underneath that was previously titled "When Peace Officer Must Accompany Patient." But the only thing in there was what's called an emergency order of detention, which wasn't even defined in the statute, in the ordinance. So we've gone ahead and we've incorporated the definition. It's in chapter 573 of the Texas Health and Safety Code. And we've retitled it to emergency order of detention, and then made it clear at the end there that this isn't the only situation. They are still allowed when it's reasonable to do so, to also still accompany. But the only situation where they're required to would be those emergency order of detentions. Then we get to the non-emergency ambulance transfer services, the franchise services, and this makes up the majority of the chapter, so it's going to be the next several slides. But in section 5.59 here, this sets out the applications for those non-emergency ambulance transfer service franchises. The primary changes here were to delegate the receipt and review of the application to the fire department along with the legal department. Those are the departments that are going to be primarily involved in this, reviewing insurance, reviewing need. So it just made sense to have those departments actually be doing the review. We also wanted to clarify in subsection 1 there that the applicant had, where it said the applicant has not been convicted of felony of crime or moral turpitude, which is just a crime of indicating bad character, that it doesn't just apply to the applicant being the organization itself, but includes the governing person of the applicant or an officer, such as the president of the company. In addition, under subsection 3 there is a requirement for an updated list of vehicles to be submitted to the fire chief each year, so that we'll have a pretty up-to-date list of what ambulances are actually available in case of emergency. In section 513, we updated the insurance to track more what we've been requiring in newer contracts. So we've upgraded it from $250,000 to $500,000 per person, and from $500,000 to $1 million per occurrence for personal injury or death, and $100,000 for property damage. Then in section 514, we did have a little debate as to whether this was necessary, but ultimately we decided to recommend keeping a requirement for a bond, just as a protection of the city should we have to seek revocation of one of these franchises. It provides us with means to defend the decision to revoke the franchise if they tried to sue us, and it allows us to use that towards getting additional franchisees. In section, our next one here, we have section 515 and 517 go very much together. And I talked this over with the finance department thoroughly. We ultimately determined it was best to recommend continuing the structure we currently use, which sets a franchise fee of 3.5% of the total amount billed for each ambulance service, and making that remittance due each calendar month, along with documents showing that that's actually the amount that they made, the amount of income they received from their ambulance services in the city. Under section B, you'll see a big section at the bottom there that was deleted. We deleted that section because it was very duplicative. It was duplicating section 517. And so we just moved it all into 517 and reworded it so that all the issues were still addressed. Then in 516, we tightened up wording to prevent conveyance of a franchise. So if there's a sale of all the assets or a merger or anything like that, that the franchisee's franchise does not go with their ambulances, with their equipment. They will have to do a new application and have it approved before they can have a non-emergency transfer service franchise. Under 518, the definition, in the definition section, we'd actually cleaned up the definition of emergency medical service personnel to include all certified EMTs under the health and safety code. So we were able to remove all that additional language under subsection 5 there, so that it just now refers to emergency medical service personnel as it's defined. Subsection B was added after discussion. We determined that the city does not currently take responsibility for running background checks. We place that burden on the franchisee themselves. But this additional requirement will allow us the means to verify those qualifications of the personnel in the event that questions come up regarding those qualifications or the hiring practices of one of our franchisees. Under section 519, most of the standards for vehicles and equipment was fairly good, but it was missing a radio requirement. So we worked with fire and got a radio requirement such that they'll have the means to communicate with Temple Fire and Rescue units and the Bell County Communications Center. In section 520, the intent here was to reduce the valid reasons to refuse transport, but still provide reasonable grounds in appropriate cases. So we took out when the patient is insane, mentally ill, drunk, or has willfully refused to pay for services. But we do still have disorderly or unruly. So if it's not safe to transport the patient, they still won't be required to transport. Under B, the franchisee can safely transport the patient. And under D, any similar matters. So if there's good cause that they can show, hey, this is going to be dangerous to actually do this transport, then those will be the grounds to still refuse service. Under section 521, that clarified a standard response time for non-emergency ambulance transfer service. A lot of these, because they're non-emergency, they will be agreed to between the franchisee and the person requesting the transport beforehand, and they'll just schedule a time out. But the way we had it, it was based solely on agreement. So instead, we've gone ahead and we've set a standard rule of thumb of 30 minutes. After working with the fire chief, we determined that was a reasonable amount of time for these non-emergency transfers. But we're still allowing, if there's a previous agreement between the franchisee and the person requesting, then they can go by that agreement. In section 522, we had a similar case where it said that if a franchisee came to propose changes to the general rates, which are currently set by resolution, if I remember correctly, then they would just be given a hearing within a reasonable time. This sets a more clear timeline. So there's still a little bit of wiggle room if additional time is reasonably needed. But otherwise it will be within 60 days. We will give them a public hearing on those proposed rates. And then the city council, in their discretion, will have the opportunity to approve or disapprove the proposed changes or make any order that they find reasonable. So if they say, well, we see why you need more, a higher rate, but we don't agree that it should go as high as you're proposing, within reason, you could find that way. And that goes over all the substantive changes. I am here for any questions.
What happens in the ETJ?
In the ETJ, they should be covered by the Bell County Ambulance Services.
So they dial 911 and Bell County Ambulance Services goes to the location.
Yes.
There are 2 services in Temple right now. Isn't that correct?
We actually have 3 franchises. So
Okay.
AMR, Temple EMS, Acadian Ambulance, and then there's a third called City Ambulance.
Okay. It's been 4 or 5 years since we reviewed this. I remember we approved 2 right away. I think one more came forward a
That
little
was,
later.
Temple EMS AMR was in 2017.
Yeah.
And we switched away from Baylor Scott and White.
Right.
So it's actually been 6 years for them, or going on 6 years. And then Acadian was the next year. And then City Ambulance, I want to say, was in 19, if I remember correctly. And they mostly handle transfers from the urgent care. So like from Premier or Express ER is where they typically go.
I thought that we had, not that it matters, because obviously I was mistaken, but I thought that when the third one came forward, I thought that we denied their request.
And I'm leaving someone out. I feel very bad about it. Baylor Scott and White's got an ambulance still too, but they run transfers with. So we actually have 4. So we did deny one back a few years ago. And I don't recall what that was. They were not wanting to base here, and they were, I think
I think they had some bad referrals too. From
Yeah.
other-
and they were out of Georgetown or Round Rock, but they were just gonna basically drive up here for the day and then drive back, which obviously is not allowed by our
Okay.
franchise agreement. So,
All right, wow.
and Baylor Scott and White, just so you know, they basically just do facility transfers to home or do the neonatal and child transfers with the child ambulance.
Okay. Okay, good. And now this is the franchises are up for review. Did you say every 4 years?
Every 5 years.
5?
Yeah.
Okay. So for this chapter is just being cleaned up and then
We have
We'll
one up
approve.
for renewal in September.
Yeah.
So this
Okay.
will give us time to complete the process, and there's a 30-day waiting period after approval.
is it smarter to approve them staggered like we're doing currently? So that in case something ever, just went haywire, we're not left with no ambulance service, right? Is that why we're staggering them?
I think there's.
Or is it just 'cause that's when they came on?
That's correct, yeah. And AMR is also, or Temple EMS is also up this September, but that's our emergency franchise. So when we first contracted with them or gave them the franchise, it was an initial 6 years and then 3 3-year terms to their franchise. And so this will be the first renewal after the 6 years. So it'll be their first 3-year renewal.
Okay,
Just remember, for the emergency, we do a request for proposals and select a company. The franchises are for the non-emergency.
and are we satisfied with how it works by having everyone staggered, or would it make more sense to do something else?
I think it's working fine. So.
Okay. You're good. Thank you, Mr. Donald.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything? All right. I'll just step up here. I have to read you in. Receive departmental update from police.
Appreciate it. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm gonna fill you full of data. Part of it's gonna be a little bit disappointing on the front end, but I hope to bring it home for you on the back end. So you've heard me talk about this. Our work starts here. It's relationships, trust, and communication with the community. We are at a 16% vacancy rate at this point. Even given that, our folks are doing a remarkable job. Continuing to get qualified, competent, and folks with character in the door continues to prove challenging for us. Our non-SWAT side, we're doing very well. So quickly, I wanted to kind of run through some old data. So from 2018 to 2022, we've had a 14% increase in the city. But keep that in mind as we, more people, more problems, more people, sometimes more issues. But 2018 to 2022, this all came from the city secretary. Thank you, Jana, for the data. So I wanted to show you, and this will be a little bit, I didn't have all, since we moved the date, I've got some March data through March, and then I've got April data on the back end. But just to show you some examples of the increase in workload, open records requests are up about 160%, calls for service are up 14%, arrests up 32%, citations up 15%, warnings up almost 40%, cases cleared up 18%, SRO cases taken in the schools up 233%, COPS classes that we are offer to the public and to those that call us up 400%. So the volume of work is not really slowing down. We just got reaccredited. That'll be on the front part of the city council meeting tonight. We'll be receiving that from Chief Michael Gentry, retired Chief Michael Gentry. Takes a lot of work to get that accomplished. We've been accredited the first time in 2019. We go through every 4 years, we go through a reaccreditation process. We passed it swimmingly. They had lots of great comments to talk about your police department. So let's talk about stats. Now, these are through April. So last year, you might recall, we didn't have any homicides until June. So if you were to do the math in comparison, that's a 200% increase in comparison where we were year to date last year, where we are this year. Just remember, when you deal with small numbers, and these are all relatively small numbers, differences create larger percentage base. So while it may seem like these are large percentages, you really have to do the hard math in between them. Sexual assault or rape, we talked about that on September 26th of last year. Tivers informed us they were reclassifying some of those cases. So we have more cases that didn't used to go into this bucket that now have to go into this bucket. It's through Tivers reporting, which gets reported up to NIVERS. So the Texas Incident-Based Reporting System gets reported to the National Incident-Based Reporting System. There's always some definition issues at the national level that may not coincide exactly with Texas law. And so you'll see an increase in that category. That is going to continue to increase throughout the year as we begin to stabilize the data based on a new definition. Robberies are up 113%. It's really 9 additional cases. What we see in that category is in many of those instances, they are drug-related ripoffs that occur. And often very hard to get charged because even though that we can prove the case, the credibility for the prosecutors, they don't have much faith in the witness testimony, so those cases don't get charged. Aggravated assault, remember I talked about that all year last year. That was the one category that gave me great concern. It's down 19%. Burglaries are up slightly of both building and a residence, although it's not hugely significant. It is up. In those categories, we recently arrested, I believe, 2 sets of burglars, and we hope that those will kind of stabilize. Larceny is still down. Auto theft is on the increase. If you remember, in 2021, we saw a decrease in every crime category, major crime category. The same principle, what goes up must come down. You can only go down for so long. Auto theft is up. Has anybody heard of the Kia Boys? Yeah. So just Google Kia Boys on YouTube. They will show you how to get into a Kia or a Hyundai with a screwdriver, and you can start it with an iPad charger or an iPod charger.
I heard a news report yesterday that over 300 of that type of car has been sold in New York City, like in the last 60 days.
Yep. Started in Milwaukee. Milwaukee has an average of 10,000 cars stolen every year. They steal these cars and then they just trash them. They just get in police pursuits or do donuts in the street. It's two major product lines, the Kia and the Hyundai products. So those vehicles, actually, insurance companies are debating on whether they're going to cut them from their insurance policies. And now that they've recognized the error in their design and functionality, the parts are all on back order. So even if you own one of those products, you're still going to be waiting a significant amount of time. Total part one crimes, violent crime. We've had 6 more reported incidents. Again, that doesn't alarm me at this point. Property crimes still continue to be down by 8%. Now, you might remember I mentioned last time I wanted to get a 5-year look back. This is some information I had prepared for the mayor a while back. So this is homicides from 2018 to 2022. 14 in 2018, again, a bit of an anomaly year, all the way to 2022, which are our lowest rate in 4 years or 5 years of 4. Sexual assaults continued to drive those numbers down. You'll see the increase largely changed by the definition change through Tibers. Robbery consistently down. Aggravated assault, this is the category that was alarming me last year. Violent crime rate per 1,000 has increased by 0.02 of a point from 2018 through 2022. Burglary of a residence consistently down from 144, a high in that 5-year of 2019, down to 80. Burglary of a building down by almost 100 incidents or events from 2018 to 2022. Larcenies down by over 200 cases, 200 incidents. UUMVs down fairly significantly from 184 to 140. This was a bit of an anomaly year. And we may see that because of the Kias and the Hyundais, and we may see that increase currently because it's literally, if you want to learn how to steal a car, you just go on YouTube, they'll teach you how to do it. Total property crime is decreased by almost 400 incidents from 2018 to 2022. Property crime rate has fallen significantly from 25.8 to 17.76. Total violent and property crime down as well. So we talked a little bit last year. This is just a reminder, our violent crime strategy. I've got a detective assigned with the FBI Federal Bureau of Investigations, Violent Crime Task Force. We call in and work with DPS on a fairly regular basis. We've got an internal task force working on this. Our crime scene investigators utilize E-Trace and NIBIN information. Block safety cameras have been installed. Raven shot detection was recently installed and dialed in. So let's talk a little bit about that. Very helpful in our cases. Numerous UUMV stolen autos that are detected on those camera systems. We've found a missing persons. We've been able to solve 2 aggravated assault with deadly weapons and a case involving unlawful installation of a tracking device and possession of marijuana. That's just a few of the samplings of what that technology. We actually had a shooting a few weeks ago or a month. We arrived on scene before the 911 because of that system. It is very helpful.
How long has that been active now?
The Ravens, the flock safety cameras went in December. It took us a little bit to dial in the acoustics on the Raven shot detection system because it was originally, they were like, it won't detect fireworks. And then New Year's Eve happened. Yes, we realized we hadn't quite dialed them in enough.
Now, do those two systems work together? Or
They
are
do.
Totally.
No, they work.
Yeah.
So this one, if it hears a shot, these all automatically act.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're having a lot. It's fun system to have because it really makes our job fairly easy. It tells us where they're going. It takes a snapshot of the vehicle, provides us the license plate and the direction of travel, and all we've got to do is kind of move in.
And if I remember right, Chief, that's not just super expensive.
It's $50,000 for, I believe, around $50,000 per square mile.
And we're covering,
1 square mile.
and
And
the
we've
cost
got it
of,
in the budget to cover a 2nd square mile.
and the cost of the new officer is,
Oh, it's $100,000. Yeah, this technology combined with what you just approved in the Axon contract, which takes effect in October, that is essentially gonna put these license plate readers in every patrol car that we have. Just rolling around, running data.
I bet that number is more than $100,000 now, chief.
Yes, ma'am, it probably is. That's an
All in
estimate.
with vehicle and equipment.
Yeah,
oh,
that's really just what I was accounting for is really just hiring, training, that first essential year. So previous 90 days, we continue to work on the Public Safety Training Center, niche RMS, Project Centurion will actually be presenting, the first build to the CPAC this upcoming Tuesday night. They're very curious about that project. Reaccreditation, animal shelter expansion still continues to move on. We are on time and under budget, right now. So that is good news. Community outreach events will continue. We were prepared for the 2023 budget. Relationship, trust, and communication. Again, we'll still stay on top of the animal shelter expansion. And Public Safety Training Center, continued focus on violent crime. And violent crime is increasing almost everywhere. Just to keep it in a frame of reference. So how can you help me? Please take your valuables out of your vehicle. Please take your guns out of your vehicles. When I roll into work every day, first thing I do is sign on the computer, I review all the calls. And almost every day, somebody broke into my car and they stole my .40 caliber Smith & Wesson and maybe my AR. And all we were doing is putting weapons in the hands of those that are going to commit criminal acts in our city. Lock your cars, stay vigilant, see something, say something, turn your porch lights on for us. That's something. Criminals don't want to be detected. They don't like lights. Upcoming events, we've got the air show, kiddo card event at Black Rifle Coffee Company, Burgers with a Badge coming up on June 2nd at Santa Fe Depot. We also have some tabletop exercises that we're working on with both TISD and BISD that'll be taking place later on this year. Just an example of some of the things, we are taking applications for our Citizens Police Academy currently. So if you know somebody that's interested, they can just go online. Summer camps are getting ready to kick off. Special Olympics, the Officer Memorial was just held. We actually have the Bell County Memorial next week. And who doesn't like donuts? And I'm happy to entertain.
when's the animal shelter supposed to be operation?
August.
Pretty quick.
This is a 10-month project.
Could you talk a little bit about the redefinition of rape?
Yeah, so the definition for most states, they assign it to a specific
Age?
age. So in the state of Texas, they just say anyone under the age of 17 doesn't have the right to consent. So as an example,
I
if
see.
it gets reported to us that had 2 consensual 16-year-olds engaging in a sexual act, that gets reported
It's
as a
rape then, called rape then. Get it? Okay,
So-
thank you.
That's not the same at the federal level or even in other states. So they have to try and take 50 different states and make the definitions apply. And some of them are age specific. And so they recategorize those to code differently. And so they will all go into the sexual assault or rape category.
Is that all, does that automatically generate a rape charge?
Well, if we get the information or it gets reported to us, that's what generates the report. Then it gets investigated, it gets sent over to the district attorney, the county attorney in that case, because it would be a juvenile and they'll determine what the charges will be filed or not.
Y'all see any increase in trafficking?
No, the trafficking statute's really complicated. It's a really hard statute to
Human trafficking?
truly put into place just based on all the requirements that go into it. And some of those folks, when you think of human trafficking, it's not just about teenagers or runaways. It's construction jobs, it's massage
Sure.
parlors, it's all of those things. And to make a charge, you really need a victim that is willing to work with you hand in hand to build and investigate the case. So in many instances, say it's an Asian massage parlor. You're not going to be able to just go in and build that relationship so that they're going to tell you because they've been indoctrinated in their culture and all through their life. They don't have access to their documents. They've been threatened by whoever is employing them that I'll keep your passport, your visa, all your stuff. It's really hard to build those cases. But no, the short answer is no. Do I think it's going on? I do.
Are we having any increase in issues with language barriers?
No.
No. Good.
We have a few Spanish speakers myself. I speak in poquito. And
Muy
we
bien.
have a language line that we can utilize as well. So we have other avenues to ensure that we're able to effectively communicate. And it's not just Spanish, which is
Sure,
perhaps
of
the
course it
predominant
isn't,
second
yes.
language. It's any type of language you might imagine. We can generally get somebody on the language line that can help us navigate certain things.
Where is the language line located?
I have no idea. It's like an 800 number.
Oh, okay.
And they may have
Probably
representatives in every
lots
state.
of
I'm not
places,
sure.
Is it specifically for law enforcement? The language line?
Dispatchers, law enforcement, ambulance, fire, those types of things. Yes.
Chief, can you talk a little bit about your partnership with Central County Services and how that's going?
Yeah, so when I got here in 2020, one of the first places I reached out to was Central County Services. And I said, hey, I'd love to meet with you guys. And when I walked in, they were really nervous. They were like, what do you want to talk to us about? I was like, I want to figure out how to work together on mental health related substance use disorder type of situations. So we very quickly talked about the co-responder program. I said, I'd love to partner with you. I'd like to take one of your employees and embed them in the patrol division of the Temple Police Department. I'll make space for them. They'd work out of there. You'll pay all their salary and benefits. And they were agreeable to it. And so we kicked off this program. She's there really from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. And when we're going out to navigate one of these challenging scenes that maybe involves mental health, severe or persistent mental health issues or substance use disorder issues, she can go out there. She's able to open doors that we traditionally haven't been able to get open because their rules and methodology are entirely different than ours. So it's hugely successful. We have Tanitha Payton. To have it matter, she is just the most abundant piece of joy you will ever meet. Always happy, funny, but very good on the streets, working with folks that find themselves with these kinds of challenges. So when we had a couple of jumpers, she was on scene with us once we got them into custody to get us a bed somewhere for these individuals. And also work with them on their aftercare as well, getting them plugged into programming and services that are already available. So it's worked very well. We just recently spoke at Connecting the Dots event in Killeen, and they're already being approached by other agencies to try and develop the same type of programming. It's a good program. We need more of them because we have a lot of challenges. But it's working out really well. We're now into kind of we're working through all the just basic premises of it. And now we're going to be in the data collection phase of repeat calls for service or how many, do they have access to medicines, whatever the metrics that we determine, we'll be able to report out on.
Thank you.
Did that cover it?
Yes, thank you.
The cops unit at, Ramada, how is that going?
Yeah, we're not there as often as we'd like to be, obviously due to our staffing challenges. But we do try and make it out there. The calls for service dropped incredibly from where we were. I would tell you that though, that just having an office somewhere isn't the silver bullet. They've got to have a strong manager that really doesn't take much guff and is willing to evict people if they're violating the rules. And I think we've got that. With the one we worked with on the actual space, you weren't gonna mess with her. She's gonna take care of it. And she was, they got violated their contract. They were out. That's a big piece of it as well. So we hope to, as we regain some of our strength, to be able to be out there more often. We've already talked with another 55 and older program that may come in towards Canyon Creek about having some office space down there as well. Again, I'd love to be able to house out of there and office out of there. But given where we are staffing wise, we've got to make decisions every day on where we are putting our resources. So,
That potential developer was very grateful for talking with you.
yeah, he was super nice guy.
Yeah, very nice.
And I'd like to be back in the Salisbury area as well. That's an area we need to be involved in. So, and I don't have that piece figured out yet. To really take us back to where we were, I guess, in the nineties is what's been reported to me, where there were substations in areas that needed a little more emphasis or more relationship building. That's exactly what I'd like to go back to, is to have a presence in those neighborhoods that need us more. I think that makes a huge difference.
And that's the 16% vacancy is part of the issue,
Yes,
or the
because
major part of the
it
issue.
is, because we've really backfilled patrol.
Yes.
Patrol cannot fail. Patrol is the bread and butter of every law enforcement agency. So positions that have become vacant in other units, I haven't filled them because I don't have the available staffing to work with. So I pulled folks from investigations, cops, violent crime enforcement squad, the entire traffic division is in patrol right now.
Do you see any daylight at the end of the tunnel for the vacancy?
I do. So I think for all of us, there's so much noise. I mean, there's so much noise. But most recently on our testing, we saw 2 out-of-state police officers that passed our test. We don't typically see that very often. But I think our message has gotten broad enough and out there enough that it's starting to permeate the noise that exists out there. There's just so much information coming at us digitally, phone, media. It takes a while for that distinct messaging to get out there. We were just on the phone with we were on a video call this morning with a gentleman who was in Memphis, Tennessee, who was wanting to maybe come work for us. So we talk to people from all around the country. Now, whether they follow through on all their dreams and aspirations, but we get a lot of outside. So I do see a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel, and I think we have to just be, we have to recognize where we are as a society, recognize what's occurred in the environment, and continue to be working forward to hiring people with character. Most other things can be trained, but getting folks of good character. So if anyone here knows somebody, would love to see them, go to jointemplepd.com. It's got all the information.
The
Are
good
there
news
other
is that
things-
me and Kathy and Chief all passed the PD entrance exam this morning.
Nice, well done.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Barely squeezed by on that math part.
I was trying to say we're gonna be without a city manager now.
No, just was interested in the experience.
Sure.
As we evaluate, all aspects of how we can help get more officers
Good.
to the department.
I was really glad I passed.
Now I'm waiting for the chief to pass the bar exam. I think that's only fair, right?
It's the same.
Well, I didn't know what we were doing this morning, so
It was
I
a
think a
surprise.
few people did. I did not know, and they're all of a sudden giving,
There they
you have
were.
20 minutes to complete this section.
Okay.
So I was glad.
And he passed with flying colors.
Are there other is there anything that you haven't told us that council could do to help?
You know, I spent some time this week, looking at what's causing what's happening in our environment. And you can pull up any number of academic articles. There's really been about 4 things. And hopefully I'll remember all 4. One has been the increase in scrutiny of every law enforcement actions. 2, and I'm not necessarily saying that's a bad thing, they're just saying one of the things that is causing retirements are up. I think about 42% nationwide of law enforcement who can leave and are choosing to leave. The increased prosecution of law enforcement, which I believe nationwide might be up about 80%. So law enforcement is being prosecuted in more cases. And again, I'm not making a judgment on it. And violent crime. They say those 4 things are the things broadly that are impacting what we do. And I'm not saying that scrutiny isn't earned, because it certainly is in some places. But I think a lot of folks that would traditionally have been drawn to this type of service related, when they're looking for a job, they're giving out, they're like, police officer, yeah, I'd really like to do that, but plumber or painter doesn't look too bad these days right now. So I think there's a lot of variables that go into that. You know, you'd have to really do a deep dive into the data, the aggregation of ages within law enforcement. I'll give you an example. The entire command staff at Temple Police Department can retire today.
That would be not good.
That would not be good. That is every lieutenant on up. So we've got to figure out succession planning,
Yes.
continuing to tout the message and highlight the positive work that law enforcement does. And permeate that next generation that's coming up. And that next generation is very different than we grew up. TikTok, Insta spam, Facebook, all those things that I think are the devil. But that's how they live their life. It's very similar to when I was raising my kids. When they got phones, they'd sit at the table and they're like, no, this isn't gonna work for me. They'd rather text each other than talk to each other. And they're 3 feet from each other. I'm like, no, put them in a bucket. We're gonna sit down and have a meal. So we've just gotta, and figure out how to work that. Most, at least the last data set I saw said most newcomers into any job will have 13 to 18 jobs over the course of it. For most of us, that's almost unheard of.
Yeah.
We came from kind of that loyalty base where the company took a chance on me and with that company till the end of times. And then certainly have to look at the economy. Economy, inflation, which is probably causing some of our increases in some of those areas. It is complicated. When you go downstream for the criminal justice system, you gotta look at the courts.
For sure.
And are the courts able to keep up with their caseload? Are they making selective discretionary decisions which don't really teach accountability, responsibility, or consequences for our actions? I'll stop there. But I'm happy to entertain.
You're
you.
totally right.
All right. Thanks, Chief. Before you sit down, guys, anything else? Don't mean to rush them off. Everybody good?
Where are the donuts, Chief?
Should have brought. I gave you.
Get one to everybody?
One donut is the point.
We're supposed to remember that. Got 3 grand. Okay, so, thanks to all the presenters. We appreciate your time and your effort getting the presentation together. And, it is currently 4:25, and at this time, the council will enter into executive session. Pursuant to the Texas Government Code Section 551.087, the city council will meet in closed session to discuss or deliberate commercial or financial information received from a business prospect that the governmental body seeks to have locate, stay, or expand in or near the city of Temple, and with which the governmental body is conducting economic development negotiations, or to deliberate the offer of a financial or other incentive to such a business project. No final